The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hi, welcome to a discussion with Glenn Foster. I'm Eileen Cavanaugh from the Hennepin County Library Program Office, and my guest today, Glenn Foster, is the author of a book on communications, How Do I Get Through to You? How do I get through to you, Glenn?
Well, first off, I have to read you. First off, I have to figure out what you are. I have to figure out which of the four stress types that you become when stress is applied between the two of us. I have to get through to you by also reading what I call your mood language. In other words, when you get in stress, you have certain moods that develop, just like Kubler-Ross talked about stages of death. I also have developed a process in the Foster method that helps me read the mood language that you're on. I also have a section on how I read what your body is really saying, also how I read what your voice is really saying. That's how I get through to you. It sounds complex, it's not. Very simple. Very simple, Eileen.
Well, I have to confess I found it rather complex as I was trying to practice it. But before we go much further, I want to back up a little bit and ask you to say a little bit about your own background, which was a fascinating way of building the expertise that you have and then putting it into book form.
Started out as a high school teacher. Finished up graduate school, always wanted to work around students. Then I realized I was not making much money. After a short period of time as a teacher, I loved being around the children, but I had a family to support. I got into law enforcement in the Deep South, and from the experiences of being a police officer, once I came inside the building, becoming what they call a house mouse, someone who comes inside doesn't work the streets anymore, is a street potato, came inside, Eileen, and started to interview on a daily basis, over and over, different types of criminals on the squad that I was assigned at one point. And from notes and observations of people who were in extremis, people who were under great stress when they'd come in trying to withhold something from me, I had to develop tools, methodology of getting through to a person. And I made it as simple as I possibly could by analyzing exactly what their voice was doing, what their body was doing, assessing a personality very, very quickly, and then trying to code as quickly as I possibly could with a person to break through a logjam. And the hardest of all people I uncovered to talk to was someone who was in a lie, someone who was very, very stressed, who did not want to admit the truth, because if they admitted the truth to me, they went to jail. They wound up being locked up for several years. So I had to develop small mechanisms to communicate instantaneously with another person. To tune into another person, to break through the wall, the denial barriers that I had between the two of us. And then after I left law enforcement, I got into a consulting business where I was being asked by state police agencies, by local agencies, district attorneys, by federal agencies to not only instruct their personnel, but also to come in on complex cases for them. And I have done this up until just a very few months ago, since the publication of the manuscript, was being a hired consultant to come in on difficult interviews. I only know of one other person in the world who does exactly what I do. I am doing it almost on a weekly basis, being sent for. But now with this, it appears to be opening up new doors for me. I'm very excited about it. But it is an easy concept to understand. It sounds difficult, but it requires just a little bit of concentration to figure out how to break through the logjam. It is simple.
Now I want to talk a little bit about your co-author, Mary Marshall, because this book is sort of the truest form of co-authorship, because each of you contributed something unique and each of you came at it, I'm guessing, from your own perspective. Tell us a little about Mary's perspective and how you got together.
The best business day of my life was 30 months ago. Someone sat through a course at a small junior college in the Deep South, in Charleston, South Carolina. An international attorney, family attorney, came down from New York, wanted to learn some cross-examination skills, just sat through the school. It was a week-long school. At the end of the third day, I was approached by Mary, and she said, "This is applicable, your communication process. I've been sitting here listening to you. This is applicable to marital problems. This is applicable to anyone in stress. You know, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? So, well, the material is very secretive. It's just for law enforcement, for certain types of professions that I could not understand what Mary was talking about, that this was mainstream. And this was way over the top of my head what she was talking about, and I kept rebuffing what she was doing. It took her about 4 to 5 months of phone calls, letters, and finally a several-hour meeting at the end of about 4.5, 5 months during this process where she was trying to get me to work with her on a project on putting these thoughts down before I realized that it was for any relationship, for any type of interpersonal relationship where stress had appeared, to communicate effectively, because that's the reason for all the problems out here, the problems in the workplace, the problems in the home, the father who can't talk to the daughter, the mother who has trouble with a 25-year-old son, the husband and wife who have the same 3 arguments for 5 years and don't know how to get through, because everybody in a situation of stress always thinks they're right. They pull back to a dominant personality type. The gender mask disappears. Everybody starts saying, I'm right, you're wrong. Well, 50% of the time, you've got to be wrong. And I teach mechanisms how to get through this.
And once a married couple has those same arguments for years and years, it's awfully hard to move out of that rut they've gotten themselves in.
And everybody fights the same way. Anger begets anger begets depression, anger begets a divorce. And nobody knows how to read the moods, what a person's really doing, saying, how to perfectly read the other personality, and how to get out of the madness. And everything boils down to the relationship. Nobody on their deathbed says, I wished I'd have worked 12 hours a day longer, I wished I'd have got another $58,000 last year, or built a bigger home, driven a bigger car. It always boils down to the relationship. Everything in this world boils down to that. Is how do I get along? How do I communicate? How can I get these people to think my thoughts? And that's what this process is about, is how to learn how to read the person perfectly across from you and learn how to understand perfectly the mindset. And that's what it's all about, is the mindset sitting across from me is not going to see, hear, feel the same way I do. It's going to be a different mindset if it's a different personality. It can't perceive the same way.
And you've said that in about 10 seconds after sitting down with somebody, you could tell what their communication style was. And we should be mentioning that the book is sort of resolves around the 4 communication styles that you have, I guess, organized them into. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And they are the feeler,
the
driver,
yes,
the analyzer,
yes,
and the elitist. And I'm hoping you'd say something about each of those, and also tell us about the well-known personalities that you have attached to each that everybody in the audience is going to recognize.
The first one is the most complex to me because it comes in 4 forms. When it's placed in stress, it pulls down to 1 form. There are 4 forms of a feeler. Those 4 forms, when they're placed in stress, pull down to just the feeler personality. They have a unique set of rules. You are a feeler, as you and I were talking about just before airtime here.
I guessed it right away. Yes.
You betcha. I could tell quickly.
Now, how could you tell?
The way that you carry yourself, the words that you use, your manners, your gracefulness, the tempo of your speech, and other small things. It would take me about 10 minutes to go into here. Okay. But your personality, to me, is the most complex because, again, of the 4 forms. The feeler, when it's placed in stress, processes slowly. It cannot handle anger. The one mood that hurts you the worst of all is anger. Your trigger and my moods are totally different because I'm your opposite. I'm what's called a driver, as I told you. And my personality is your total reverse. You like for things to be laid back, under control, try and control the emotions. You're very task-oriented. You have prepared yourself. You have your notes in front of yourself.
That's right.
You have prepared since early this morning, yesterday, and probably the day before for this. You're task-oriented. Your dominant mood when you're in stress is bargaining. Let's reconcile this.
Let's talk about this.
Let's talk about it. And you say that all the time. There's another word you use all the time is fair, unfair. If someone is unfair to another person, does that hurt you? Would that trigger you towards that situation? If someone was unfair? That triggers you off as unfairness. And that's what I talk about inside my book is the trigger mechanism. Your trigger, my trigger are totally different. Now let's talk about my personality, which I might put on tape here, is the best of all four personalities. Wouldn't you agree with that? You said that right off the air. Thank you so much. The driver personality processes quickly, likes to play word games, which is what I do, just as I just did that last little thing for a reason, was I am a word game player. My entire life I've been that way. I can't change that. You can't change the way you are. The driver personality processes information very, very quick from a sensory standpoint. This person is bottom line, the driver personality. I like to get to the point. My trigger mechanism is right, wrong, or a personal point. If you make it personal with me, you don't do it the right way. That triggers me. My dominant mood, when I am placed in stress, is totally different than yours, which much offends you. And you and I would clash on this one point. If you and I got into a moment of stress here, my dominant mood is anger. See, that's the one thing that closes you down. You have a hard time with anger, don't you?
And if we were in conflict, you would see everything I said, or most things I said, as being wrong, whereas I would see most things you said as being unfair.
Unfair, unkind, unfeeling. And that's what you do, because I'm going to come after you because I am your reverse. I'm going to try and attack the weakness, which is one of the characteristics of my personality. And what happens in life, a lot of people are attracted to their opposites. You've heard that for 1,000 years. All of us have, is that opposites attract. And look at the clashing effect you and I have already talked about right here. You process slowly. Before you make a decision, you go through a giant internal mosaic, slowly weighing all the options. You go very slow, then you make your decision. You don't like to do anything just like this. I'm different. I process 10,000 bits of information in 0.3 of 1 second. Hey, let's go do this. That's a great idea.
Like that Intrepid car they advertised.
Correct. Ooh, nice car. I think I'll go buy that. And that's the way I make my decision. Now, you would walk around that car for 2 weeks in a showroom before you'd say, all right, I'll spend $19,000 on it. I walked in with you at the same time. You know what I'd do? Where's my checkbook? I'm going to buy an Intrepid. And that's the way I'm different than you. When you and I are at rest, we get along just fine. We're both in mutual acceptance. But when we get into stress, we jump up, we start clashing. We're on different frequencies. Just as in the studio, the frequency is very important. They tune in certain knobs. They turn in a television channel to a certain channel, and you can perfectly see it. When you get in stress, you pull into feelings. I get into stress, I get into an attack mode. Anger melts you down. Anger to me doesn't mean anything. And that's the difference between the two of us. You can remember what's said for years if someone's unfair to you. Would you agree with that? You can go back and quote the words as a feeler. To me, anger means nothing. To you, anger causes closure. And it's painful for you. To me, anger is 10 seconds, and 2 hours later, and it doesn't mean anything. Now, let's jump on to the third one, the analyzer. This personality controls emotions. They're totally the reverse from you. This person in stress is focused, has a good thought line, everything must be factual, don't have emotions, because emotions are totally controlled by the analyzer. And you were looking for examples with each one. A good example that I've talked about is Barbara Walters as an analyzer. She's much in control, very focused, a purist in her thought. Everything must make sense to this person. And don't jump around like I do with 10,000 comments. Don't do that, because that throws her off. What Barbara Walters wants is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 when she gets in stress. It must make sense. Stop being so emotional. What are you doing? This person is the center of a hurricane. They're standing right in the eye, and that's the way they handle things when stress happens. They sit there in the middle, looking around. What is everyone so excited about? I'm totally controlled. My face is controlled. My body's controlled. Oh, Bob doesn't have any emotions. Bob does have, if he's an analyzer, emotions, but they're controlled down to the nth degree. You're not going to see a lot of body language from this theoretical Bob we just talked about. With me, you're going to see an actor come roaring out if I'm stressed. With you, someone emotional comes roaring out. Everything is an emotional feeling content. Now, the last one is the elitist. This is the most complex of all of the stress types. When this one is placed in stress, I have seen it from my criminal background, not me being a criminal, but from watching criminals. This one is very unique because apparently, from looking at it, it's about 1/3 driver, about 1/3 feeler, and about 1/3 analyzer. And when it gets in stress, it apparently is racing through all three of these areas looking for a way out. This is a person just like Kissinger. This is a person who has perfect taste in clothes, very egocentrical, intellectual. This person is aloof. This person would never do anything crude, crass. This person is not going to come in and do as I would in a party. I've never met anyone I don't like at a party. That's just the way I am. Kissinger would come in and say, why aren't these people bowing down? This is just the way an elitist is. They can't help that. None of the four of us, none of the four personalities I've just mentioned, you as an example of a feeler are a perfect example of Mary Richards on the old Mary Tyler Moore show. Would you agree with that?
Well, not perfect, but
very close. The pain of rejection or of stress being applied to you or someone barking at you, and you pull back very quickly to that stress type. The gender mask that you wear disappears very quickly. The cultural mask, the mask that you wear on this set, disappears very quickly in stress, and for a short period of time, I have to approach you just with one unique set of rules, and then as soon as I approach you correctly with the rules, tune into exactly what you're doing. As soon as you come out of stress, then you go back to your gender role, you go back to the masks, the hats that you wear in life. And this is where I differ in my approach. This little small window that opens up very quickly. All these roles that we wear disappear. All these 8 types pull down to 4 stress types, and I have to learn how to perfectly talk differently to each of these 4, or I don't know the way they see, hear, feel. I cannot communicate to get through the logjam.
so it's sort of like going to a foreign country. You want to learn a few words of that language so that you can speak in a way that's understandable to them.
Exactly. It's like a dog trying to speak to a cat. When they're meowing and barking at each other, they don't speak dog and cat. They can't communicate. You can't communicate with a 1-year-old child like you can a 25-year-old. But our troubles are not with a 1-year-old, it's with a 25-year-old that we can't communicate with because of stress type different and because we misread things in body language and in the voice. What a person really means. What a person really means, on how you get underneath the surface. There's one section where I allude to that is so important in communication skills. That's the part where people have trouble. When they get inside situations, they misread what's going on. They misinterpret.
You had an interesting example about the man who receives a gift from his friend that's an antique backgammon set. And
yes.
the woman has given him as a gift for his birthday some silk shirts. And she, I think, was she a feeler?
She was a feeler. Suzanne was a feeler.
And he was an analyzer.
Carl was an analyzer.
And I could really relate to that because I thought, now, my thought was, that man is an insensitive bore to say such a thing to his wife. And furthermore, I have to admit, I thought, and I can't imagine anybody who would think differently about this. But you thought differently about it.
That's right. And what it was a miscommunication. He is an analyzer. Remember I said the analyzer controls the feelings. He looks at things sensical. And it was something that was important a little bit to him. But he was not in the emotional vein of his feeler wife, Suzanne. You're a feeler. You quickly picked up that her feelings had been trampled on. The gift was not appreciated. And this hit you like a train. How dare this person not have feelings about this situation? Now, I'm a driver, and I wrote about, with Mary, in our book, how these two people were miscommunicating. And that's what it's all about. Now, something that small, that's a real story. Something that small can create a barrier, can it? And then there comes another barrier behind it. Then there's another barrier behind it, until you have 4,000 barriers that you can't get through.
Indeed, as I recall, that was kind of the straw that broke the marriage.
Yes.
And when she recalled the exact words as the feeler, she recalled them, though, in a little different tone than apparently he said them to begin with.
Yes, he's looking at things logically.
He said this is a real gift.
Now, things to him, his trigger is logical, illogical, rational, irrational. She behaved how? Irrational. She did things illogical when she became emotional. He could not relate to this. He loved her or they would have never gotten married. She loved him. They would have never gotten married, but they're sparking because they don't understand each other. She thought he would see this as a feeling gift. He didn't. It's a shirt. It's a shirt. It's a shirt. What's the big deal? It's a shirt. How can a shirt
Never
be
mind
emotional?
that it's this wonderful silk shirt that feels so good.
It's so soft and loving and caring and sincere,
and it's sophisticated.
as you perfectly have described it as a feeler would. They have miscommunicated. Why do you think 50% of the marriages end up as Carl and Suzanne? It is miscommunication. And it's not that they don't love each other. 99% of the time, I can't talk to you. We're not the same. He's not like me. He doesn't think like me. She doesn't think like me. They can at work if they're different types. Your daughter, son, if they're different, can't think like you about the same situation. The husband, wife can't think the same way if they're a different stress type. And that's where the sparks happen. 50% end in divorce because of that problem. And everybody says, oh, it's a gender difference. Oh, he's just like his father. It's that family way he was raised. Or it's she was the only child and it's the way her parents messed her up. No, people pull back to a stress type. These roles were given by life trauma, life experience, disappear. And then the real you comes roaring out. And apparently they only come out in 4 forms. It's just uncanny how it works.
I wonder if to pull these 4 types together, you would use the scenario, that wonderful example of the unfaithful husband, and sort of show us some nonverbal cues too, which I think were interesting in that example.
The biggest destroyer of all relationships is the lie. When one of the two pulls into denial of reality, when one of the two knows, what I am saying, Eileen, is a fabrication. I'm going to lie to this other person to get out of it. The worst pain in the world is misrepresentation, and that's the reason that was placed inside here. My second book is about that right now. I'm writing about that right now with Mary, and that's something that causes tremendous pain to me, is the lie. The body language is so important, like when he looked away, he rubbed his nose, he touched his nose, he had a couple of speech disturbances. Speech disturbances when a person tries to buy time when they're hit with relevant questions, like when she asked him, where have you been? And instead of having words come out, he just has sound to buy a few seconds of time.
Until I think up a story.
Until I can lie, the big fat story. The body and the voice, when a person lies, both happen at exactly the same time, giving off stress signals. The body gives off more signals than the voice. It normally gives off between 2 and 3 more signals per second than the body can, than the voice can. The voice has to pace itself between 120 and 180 words a minute, and it has to slow down a little bit and edit and clarify in its brain, how am I going to lie? How do I pull this off? He may repeat a question. Where have you been? What do you mean, where have I been? He asked her a question to gain a few seconds of time. I had this great big project, this gargantuan project to work on. Remember as he said that? And suddenly he starts using language he's never used before. That's one of the things I've trained myself to listen for, language for the first time at the point of a lie. Changing very quickly in moods is another way of picking up a lie. But the body, again, is giving off so many signals, so many people have a hard time paying attention to it, glancing away quickly. And also, looking at the watch very quickly, as you just did, can be a way when a person's asked a relevant question to suddenly glance away as they look at a watch, to have a half second to a second to come up with something to say, to break eye contact, to reduce the stress. But the one thing I want to try and drive home here is the concept of a cluster. If I'm seeing things from the body occur, things from the voice, I have to have more than one signal coming at me. One signal means nothing. It just means stress. One of the camera persons here at the studio is standing in a certain way. It just means they're standing in that way. Or the person for the first time coughs when something is asked. Maybe they just coughed. Maybe they just looked away for the first time. It has to be based in posing an important question to a person. Where have you been? You know, you're accusing me of being out with a younger woman. Remember when he used that example?
I loved it because, of course, she said nothing about a younger woman.
She had not said one word about a younger person being involved, or the word younger being brought up for the first time. A little Freudian slip there. You have to train yourself to look for more than one signal to occur. And I also, again, repeating this, look for the body and the voice at the same time to change. Because I have literally hundreds of mechanisms from the body and voice I could be teaching the audience right now to look for. That is very, very complex, the body and voice, because it requires total concentration. Most people don't concentrate on what other people are saying.
And you've emphasized, too, the cluster of things that were important to look for, not just one.
Not just one thing. The way you're holding your notes may just be the way you hold your notes, but if you suddenly changed your notes, if I posed a question of importance to you and then you did several things, you suddenly moved or changed, I'd know that that bothered Eileen and I'd have to get out of it, or if I was interviewing you about something important, I'd have to maybe go into it just a little bit in a nice way.
You had an interesting little quip about the yawn, which I always assumed that someone was bored in a meeting or so. But you had an interesting point about the yawns.
The yawn is a very high stress indicator. Almost by itself, it's extremely high. I've noted with people under 25, if I have continuous yawning during an entire interview period with them, above 90% of the time they were going to lie to me. It apparently is a very, very high stress mechanism between two people. If I was talking to you and the entire interview you were yawning to me, something's wrong. Because, and I'm not saying that this person maybe had not slept in 2 days or just come back from a fishing trip here in this state or a hunting trip in this state, which a lot of people do. This is one of the biggest hunting and fishing areas in the country. If a person isn't placed in high stress and suddenly the yawning starts at that point, it can mean several different things. It can mean they're faking boredom. It can mean possibly the blood sugar levels are changing and the person has to take bigger bites of air. And it is a high stress mechanism between two people. And it's just uncanny how all these small things you don't think are important, add them together, it becomes very important what their real message they're trying to give off is telling you, because they're always telling you something. If you just learn how to read people, which is what my job has been for the last 20 plus years, is reading what's really going on video work that I have to do on watching a monitor. No, here's the areas this man's withholding, or these 6 areas, or sitting across from them, or observing through a two-way mirror. No, this man has 3 areas where he's lying to you. It's here, here, and here. And it's just reading the person, reading the body language, which is tough. Reading the voice, that's easy. Just the little examples I have, that's easy to pick up on. And then you just look for changes.
In the less than 2 minutes, amazingly, that we have left, I want you to get a little bit into the closing part of the book when you talk about the couples and their need to come to acceptance and their need to share the differences between their styles of communication. And the real gritty part of it is how that can change and better their lives.
You betcha. I'm going to finish up with the 3 R's.
That's a tough job I gave you.
You betcha. And I've only got 1 minute and 40 seconds to go. I'll do the best I can. The first one is learning how to read yourself. Read yourself. People cannot stand back away from their own personality stress type and say, this is the way other people look at me. This is the way I am. You could see yourself in print. You're saying, wait a minute, I do this, that's exactly what I do. Other people that are not your personality type look at you differently than what you look at yourself like. Everyone thinks, I'm perfect, I'm well balanced, I'm this and that. They look at you differently. Learn how to read the other person. Most people have a hard time with that too. They don't realize everyone is not them. You have to learn how to read them and possibly where you clash. You also need to learn in responding to another person that what you view as reality is not what the way they look at reality. You have to learn the rule system, learn the mood frequency that the person's on. What's their dominant mood? Each of the 4 stress types has a different mood that they're dominated by when they're in stress. The analyzer goes denial dismissal. Carl in the Carl Suzanne story, the silk shirt story, he is on a different mood frequency than her. They can't click there. Learn how to read the mood frequency.
We, I'm afraid, are on a frequency of having to get off the air. But I urge the readers to read your whole book and find out the rest, because it's a wonderful, life-changing experience, I think, to read this. Thank you so much, Glenn, for being with us.
Thank you so much.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.